Welcome to our Building Bridges series, in which we talk with people of differing worldviews and life experiences to learn how to better understand and care for one another. In this segment, we talk with former state legislators Amanda Price and David Rutledge, who worked across the aisle during their 2 terms as Michigan state legislators, about specific ways to build bridges with those who disagree with you. So my question for you is, and I think you've been alluding to it in some of your answers, what are some suggestions you have for the everyday person, kind of lessons learned on the House floor about being able to build that bridge with someone who has a very different opinion than you?
Well, I think we had also an opportunity we would vote on specific issues. And so David and I might disagree on one issue, but we'd vote together on another issue. Mm-hmm. We didn't take each other. I didn't think of David solely voting, he's only going to vote the Democratic platform, or I'm only going to vote the Republican platform. We looked at, in the legislature, you have to look at issues very pragmatically. And so one of the things David and I talk about is 90% of the time legislation passes with 100% support. It doesn't get publicized that way. So everybody thinks it's very contentious all the time, but there are very practical things that need to get done in the legislature, and people agree with it. And so from that perspective, we were able to take a step back and maybe look at these issues individually and not get caught up in the overarching political umbrella for each of our parties. And that's one lesson I would take, is a person who's a Democrat or Republican is not their party. They're an individual. They are made up of a whole bunch of life experiences, life tragedies, life happiness, and that's the piece of the person you need to understand. It's not their political philosophy, it's who they are as a person. What makes them up as that individual? What makes them so special to everyone? And when you know that about somebody, you're not as likely to classify them as, oh, that Democrat, or oh, that Republican, or oh, that somebody. You really have to understand what makes them up as a very unique individual that, frankly, God created.
Yes, this idea of sausage making, I think the founding fathers set up this whole democratic continuing experiment to be a conflict, to have this mashing of ideas against each other. And they did it, I think, to force us to find common ground. And what comes out of these conflicts are better ideas. In fact, conflict, I think, is really good. I discovered that there's high conflict and there's good conflict, and it's the good conflict that make us better people. This back and forth with debates about this issue, that issue, about life's issues, causes us to make progress, causes us to be better. But when it descends into something that becomes more powerful, something that causes me to dislike you because of what you believe, and that belief doesn't match mine, it is this business of high conflict. That's really bad. An example I want to give you of really high conflict and how it can mushroom into really bad things is a historical true occurrence: the Hatfields and McCoys. Remember that? I mean, it didn't start. It started out with just a little bitty disagreement, but it carried over through generations. Now we have families, siblings being angry at their parents. We get into these conflicts that we can't extract ourselves from, and that's high conflict, and it's bad. The research on this issue, and there is research, Jennifer, that says that when we get into these high conflict kinds of situations, that even our brain changes. There's a chemistry inside of us that changes. There is a discussion that I've been looking at a lot that's called cognitive dissonance. Cognitive dissonance. It's this conflict within us, where you might be a smoker, but smoking is bad for your health. You might be an environmentalist or want to not kill animals, but then you eat meat. So, I mean, these are conflicting things. But the thing that we can't do is let it descend into something that really causes us to hate the other person. There are about 6, or maybe 5 things that I could tick off, Jennifer, that I do. I think about, when you'd like me to discuss that. I think about these things a lot when I'm talking to people, any person. But particularly people whose ideas don't appear to match mine. There are some things that I try to force myself to think about.
Well, you know what? Let's list them. What are they?
First of all, I take people as I find them, not how I think they should be. And secondly, I try to listen carefully. And I try genuinely to see the other person's perspective, even if I don't understand it at the time. What I found, though, if I try to see it genuinely, I may not agree, but at least I come to an understanding of it. The third thing is that I look for opportunities of mutual trust. Amanda and I had that. I mean, I could ask Amanda right now, if I needed her for something, I could, and I'd ask her. I trust that she would come to she'd have my back. It's a trust. And then it's that trust piece that builds loyalty, I think. True friends are loyal without question. And they remain friends beyond time, beyond distance. And the last thing I always think, and I found this works, that mutual respect is the glue that keeps us all together. I respect Amanda, disagree with her sometimes, but respect her all the time.
I agree with that. It's the respect piece has to be, you have to separate yourself from where you disagree, because you're not going to agree with everybody all the time. You don't agree with your spouse, your children. Set that aside, and there's still that person that you respect and love behind all of that disagreement. And it seems to be right now where we can't do that separation in our society. It's all or nothing. And that seems like, I don't know if it's a product of social media or what's going on, but we don't seem to be able to separate the disagreement from the respect and love we have for people.
Yeah.
Those are wonderful insights. So thank you for sharing those.
But Jennifer, before we go really off air,
Okay.
there is I've started now, just when I have conversations with people like the group that I told you about, I've started recommending some additional reading material for them on the particular issue.
Wonderful.
There is a book I'd like to recommend to your viewers and listeners that I have found most interesting in terms of being insightful to this whole conflict thing. And it's called High Conflict. And it's written by Amanda Ripley. Amanda Ripley is the author of the book called High Conflict. I'd like to recommend. It's not a hard read. It's just I think once you get into it, you'll find it easy reading. But boy, is it filled with a lot of insights into how we get ourselves into these conflict situations, and some suggestions as to how we can extract ourselves from them.
Wonderful. That sounds wonderful. And we will definitely put that on our website for our readers to consider. Thank you so much for recommending it.
Yes.
So now that brings us to the end of our time together. I really appreciate David Rutledge, Amanda Price, former Michigan state legislators who worked together very successfully across the aisle during their time, and for sharing their wisdom about how to build bridges. If you happen to be in conversation with someone who doesn't think exactly like you do. And it's a wonderful way to care well for others when you build that trust and build those relationships. So we really appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
It was my great pleasure. Thank you.
Mine as well. It's wonderful to see David again. I just love seeing him.
Oh, thank you. The same here, Amanda. Be well and take care.